these are my opinions and my views, and these are my own.
Yeah, and
And they are
everyone's
subject to change as I grow and as I learn more and become a more educated person.
definitely, but you already are quite educated. And I would say your opinions are very valid. And if
Thank you.
someone disagrees with you, that is the nature of democratic process.
And we
Is
should
that
have the space to have these conversations. Um,
exactly?
I know that is something that we prided ourselves in at Chatham, and I think that a lot of people should.
Welcome back to the Open Eye Podcast. Today we have a super special episode. We are going to dive into the world of politics a little bit. And for some
Ooh.
of you, that will be boring, but you also seem to not really care about the future of your own life, unlike we do. So, uh, the guest today is the one and only Lalah C. Williams from Chatham University. We worked together in student government for a few years and on a lot more projects outside of that as well. So we've developed a awesome friendship and, you know, business relationship, I'd say, to an
Yeah,
extent.
I'd say that.
So so yeah, if you want to introduce yourself and what you've been up to since graduating and anything like that.
Well, hey y'all. I'm Lalah C. Williams. My pronouns are she, hers. I am a proud graduate of Chatham University, class of 2022. I graduated in May with my BA in Policy Studies and a Women's Leadership Certificate. Like Ryan said, we worked together on Chatham Undergraduate Student Government, where I served as the very first Executive Vice President for Student Diversity and Inclusion, and I held that position for 3 years. And then prior to that, my first year, I was a class of 2022 representative. Post grad life has been good to me. It's a little bit rough for a little bit there, but it's good and I like it. So almost immediately following graduation, I went back home to Prince George's County, Maryland. I pretty much slept for 2 weeks, as I'm sure most graduates did. Um, I slept for 2 weeks, and then I went to May. I went in May. I went to London with a friend of mine. My favorite band of all time is Little Mix, and as a graduation present to myself, I said I was going to go to their concert. So I did that. I came back, continued my job search, which, as most students or recent grads know, that can be a little bit rough. I did that. I participated in the Pennsylvania Center for Women in Politics New Leadership Program, which is a week-long residential intensive political boot camp for women who want to address the underrepresentation of women in politics. I had previously worked at the PCWP for 4 years, so this was on my radar. I did it my junior year virtually, and so I got to come back and do this one in person. Had a wonderful time. So I did that for the week. I visited some friends and we went to Pittsburgh Pride, which was one of my first Pride events, and so had a good time there. Came back home, learned that I had contracted COVID, not from Pride. No, I came back home. So that was on a third. I came back home on a Thursday. Went to DC Pride. Also had a great time. Then realized I contracted COVID, not from Pride, from someone else. So I was kind of homebound for 3 weeks, including over Juneteenth, which was a little bit sad, but that's okay. I am recovered.
That's cool.
After that, I served as an elections judge for Prince George's County, Maryland. In Maryland, we have early voting 8 days, starting I think Thursday to Thursday, the week before the Tuesday of the election. That sounds a little bit confusing, but it's 8 days of voting from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. for 8 days. I did that, got to meet a lot of great people, got to learn a lot about the election, the voting process in Maryland, as I knew some parts of it, but I got to do this up close and personal. I did same day registration for people and I did provisional ballots.
Mhm.
You can ask me questions about that, you totally can. Um, that was July. And then I celebrated my birthday. I turned 22. Went to the Smithsonian Natural History Museum. I went to the butterfly exhibit. That was what I wanted to do. That had ice cream, did the whole cake and ice cream shabam. And then 2 days later, my family and I went to Germany. This was a trip that we had been planning for a few years. We went to see the Passion Play in Oberammergau, Germany, which is the entire it So kind of like the entire town of Oberammergau puts on this production of the Passion of Christ. It is in Old German and it is 5 hours long. So you go for the first half, and then everyone takes like the 2 hour intermission, eat dinner, go to the museum, go hit up the gift shops, and then everyone comes back. Old German is kind of the equivalent of if you were to watch a Shakespeare play in Old English.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm pretty sure I know the story of Jesus. I could follow along pretty well. They give you a booklet and a booklight so you can read along. Um, it was kind of easy to follow along once you knew when the choir was coming in, when they brought out. It has live animals in it too, so I saw camels for the first time with my own eyes. They would say Caiaphas a lot, and Jesus and Judas, and so once you knew who was what character, it wasn't too bad. It was beautiful. It was what my mom has wanted to see, and so she's like, "I'm making a family trip out of it." I was like, "Well, I'm gonna go too." So we all went. So we hit Munich, Oberammergau, Berlin, Dresden, Bamberg, and then Prague. Um, Weimar as well. Weimar is in Germany. It is where I've decided that once I retire, that's where I want to go live.
Okay.
I went there and I was like, if I had studied abroad, I feel like this is what it would have been like. COVID kind of nixed that study abroad plan.
Definitely.
A highlight in Germany was we went to the Olympic Stadium in Berlin, the one that Jesse Owens had ran his
Mhm.
race and got all of his medals. We actually did get to go down and like walk on the track, so that felt pretty cool.
That's
So
epic.
it is a sports venue and a concert venue when you have those things happening, and then once that's over, they take it all up and it goes back to a historical site, which is
Really?
pretty cool. Yeah, Prague was fun too. We were there for 3 days, got to walk over, I think it's the Charles Bridge. I believe it was in a group. We went with the Up Tour, so there was a lot of other people in our group that we got to hang out with. Um, so I did that, and the first, so we had landed in Germany a day late because we had a layover and issues with Delta. I will say I was a little bit upset with Delta because I had better experiences on Greyhound than I had with Delta that day, which is
Yikes.
saying a lot. But that day that we had finally landed in Munich was the day that I found out that I had landed my internship with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, which is something that I have wanted to do since I was 17. I'm now 22, so it took some time. So once I came back stateside, I had about a week, and then I started the internship program. The Congressional Black Caucus Foundation is an organization that promotes Black people in government, but also helps to support you with research and education and scholarships. And it is about uplifting the Black community and providing resources, but also to bring more Black people into government and politics in that sector. So from August to December, I served as the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation intern in my Senator Chris Van Hollen's office. Um, it was an amazing experience. I'm really glad I got to do it. I got to live in DC with 17, 18 other interns from
Mhm.
like all over the country. Um, it was just great to be surrounded by Black people who were as into politics as I was, and then also work in a place that, but it was not built for someone like me. When Congress was built, Black people were enslaved, women could not vote. It was mostly about white men who could read and have property, and so to kind of be there and take in that historical part, but also to be a force to be reckoned with.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I did
That's awesome.
that. And now, so that internship ended in December, and now I'm serving as the staff assistant for United States Senator John Fetterman. As you know, he's elected from Pennsylvania. He was the previous, prior to this role, he was the mayor of Braddock, Pennsylvania, and he was the lieutenant governor. Um, and so that brings you to where I am now. What is
Delightful.
was that 6, 7 months after graduation? I don't know.
May.
Yeah,
Where's
7, 8 months.
yeah. Eight, yeah. All right. That's awesome. We'll start with the internship and
Okay.
like what um what were like some of the day-to-day stuff that they were asking you to do, and like for example, like you were in a group of you said 17, 18 people, like how many of those people do you see like driven to cause change in the future and really want to have their own office inside that building.
Yes, we were out there stirring some good trouble. John Lewis was the late Congressman John Lewis was one of my favorite members of Congress. He died on my birthday when I was 20, and like I had gone to bed that night, and then my parents saw the news. They're like, we can't tell her. We have to tell her like the next day. Um, I'm sorry, that was a little bit sad, but day to day. So it was an internship program, and so we were full time, but also with the CBCF, we did programming every single Friday. So I worked from home on Mondays, and then I did Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the office, and then Friday was programming. Most of my day to day, I spent at least, I think, 3 hours taking constituent phone calls. That was something that each of us had to do. Also, there is something that we did called batching, which is any kind of constituent correspondence that comes in via the internet. So, if you fill out a form on maybe your senator's website, if you leave a voicemail and it goes into the system, if you fax something, if you send in mail, it gets scanned into there. And
Mhm.
so excuse me, I worked on the science portfolio as well as the health and education under the science legislative correspondent and health and education legislative aide. So those were the two big, like they had the most amount of batches coming in. So I think my goal for each of them was to batch between 200 to 350 of those individual correspondences a week. It can be a lot, but I really enjoyed reading it and seeing what the great residents of Maryland were writing in to say about, or just asking their senator for. So in the science one, it ranged everything from agriculture to Chesapeake Bay to there was one about sea turtles, which I liked. And then health and education was about student loans, maternal mortality, systemic racism, sickle cell disease, which is a key issue to the senator as well as the office. So that was one of the big things I got to take a part of was attending one of the events that he sponsored about a piece of legislation that did bring more funding for sickle cell research and hospitals in the state of Maryland. There's that. I also attended a lot of congressional briefings, which I enjoyed. So whether they were, I didn't get to attend a lot of hearings, which are the ones that you kind of see online where they question witnesses. I did stake out one of those to see Senator Elizabeth Warren. I did not get the chance to meet her, but I did get the chance to chat with one of the great Capitol Police officers, which are people that you meet, every day on the Hill.
Mhm.
Um, one of I attended a 3 hour briefing about biodiversity and they are called wildlife corridors. I'm still a little bit unsure about what a corridor is, but it was about tracking the migration of birds and animals in the United States. Well, it starts in the U.S. and then seeing how their migratory patterns around the world, tracking those, but also to see how human interaction and involvement in the environment is changing their migratory patterns, which is kind of detrimental. I know one of the speakers talked about Yellowstone and some of I think they're called landmass bridges in Montana, which when I went to Montana a few years ago, but when she talked about that, I was like, oh, I know what that is. It is basically a bridge that is it's built over, the highways, and it is supposed to look like a continuation of the earth so that animals can get from one side to the other without having to go all the way around the highway or cross with the threat of being hit by a person. And so building these land masses, these bridges is actually a really good idea. One thing that they said, it connects the land and keeps animals together and their families, but it also prevents a lot of damage on your end because if you hit an animal, it costs you a lot of money
Mhm.
on car wise, and then we don't want to endanger any more species or
Hopefully.
worse have them go extinct. So there was that, and then one of my favorite health ones I attended was about it was I think it was a medical group, but it was about how to create medical technology that is not unethical and not creepy, but also doing this in a way that promotes diversity and gets you the most accurate results from your patients. And as you're probably familiar with the Tuskegee experiments, but also how medical data in the past has, not been done properly, not been done well. So rebuilding the trust within communities who were disadvantaged or who were traumatized and harmed by the system that was supposed to help keep them safe. So talking about that, I know one thing that someone was talking about is how their company was based in Sydney, Australia, and they were making like CPAP masks that go on people's faces. And there's like, we did an extensive study and had this many people and that we got it down packed. But what we realized is that we made it for people who lived in Australia and their facial structures are different than people who say maybe live in New Zealand or South Africa or America. And so they're like,
Right.
how do we fix that? So I would attend those. And then I also would meet a lot of interns. Ryan, as you probably know, I'm not shy. I'll go to people and say, hey, I'm so and so. It's nice to meet you. Let's go to this
Quality
event
staff.
together. So I would go into offices of, maybe senders who I was familiar with, ones that I knew, just saw their sign and was like, oh, that's their office. We should go in there. I'd go in and say, hi, I'm Lalah C. Williams. I'm the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation intern in Senator Van Hollen's office. Do you have interns and do they want to have lunch with us? So we formed like an intern lunch posse, which is a lot of fun because then like once you met enough people and then you'd go in the morning and you'd be like, oh, good morning, it's so nice to see you. It kind of
Mhm.
felt like your place of work. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, but a lot of the interns I met either went back home or went back to school, so I don't see them anymore now that I'm a staffer. But I did meet a lot of people who work on the hill while I'm there now, so I do get to see them, and they're like, it's so exciting because last month you were an intern and now you're staff, and like we had no doubts. I also attended a number of networking events, which range from sit down dinners or formal events, or they are holiday parties or a gathering of there's a convention in town and we're having a happy hour and you all should attend. I do still stay in contact with a lot of my cohort members from CBCF. A good amount of us now have jobs on the Hill, and so we see each other. I'm on the Senate side, and they're on the House side, so it's a little bit of a walk. So I don't
Mhm.
see them all the time, but when I do, it's like, oh, it's so good to see you. I've been to their offices, but I do see a lot of them on Metro when we're like on our way home because all of us don't live in the city. Uh, I still reside at home, which is I like it. I'm close enough that I can take public transit, and I still enjoy living in the suburbs.
That's perfect though. Like actually, it's a good balance, at least for now, as you're like
For
piecing
now,
it together.
yes. We have come to the consensus that I do need a car, so I'm in the market.
We'll put out an advert from this one.
Okay.
Okay, so then how did you transition into the role you are now from the internship?
So, as you know, November was election, and there was turnover on the House side and the Senate side. As you know, on the House side, every single spot is up for reelection every 2 years. And in the Senate, each term is 6 years, but there's an election every 2 years for a certain number of senators. I don't know the math on that. I don't know how they decide, but my senator was up for reelection. Um, we didn't have any doubts that he wouldn't get reelected. He's been in office for a good amount of time. I think he was on the House side for 14 years, and then this the end of his first full term in the Senate. So with there being new members coming, there were a lot of resume banks that were open saying we are new to Congress or we are coming. Um, Please submit your resume. So Senator Fetterman did have a job bank for his, so I applied for that. I reached out to the House Diversity Initiative as well as the Senate Diversity Initiative, and then I'm pretty well connected with some of our staff groups on the Hill, which include the Black Women's Congressional Alliance, Congressional Black Associates, and the Senate Black Legislative Staff Caucus. So when it comes to applying for jobs, maybe you were an intern or you were somewhere and you know someone, it is letting them know, um, hi, it was like great to meet you, or it was, I told you I'd provide you with an update. Well, here is my update. I did let all these people know who said when you're applying for jobs, let me know. I'll put in a good word. So I had probably applied to about 14, 15 positions that were staffers, that were paid internships, that were on and off the Hill, and letting these people that I had met know. Just wanted to let you know, I wanted to provide you a job update that I have applied for these offices. So my name had come from two separate places to my current office. They saw my resume. Well, someone in the office saw my resume and said, we should interview her." So I was interviewed. Um, I think that afternoon, like one afternoon, and then that evening I had received an offer. Um, it was, I will say, it kind well this part sounds a little easy, but I had been applying for jobs since May. So
Mhm.
I think May to July, and then once I landed the internship, I stopped my job search and then I had reapplied. So it is not as easy as it looks. I was writing a lot of cover letters. I was constantly updating my resume, asking people for help, and reaching out and saying, just wanted to let you know that I applied. Can you put in a good word for me? And then being genuine about that, not saying, "Oh, I'll reach out when I have a job," but maintaining that relationship,
Right.
and then not making it just a "this is what I want," but continuing to be in contact with these people. So if you're on the job search, I do wish y'all much luck. Um, I hope this may be providing you with some little insight. But that's how I got my position. So now I just celebrated like my first month in the office. And so my role here is not much different than what I did as an intern. I am the first point of contact for constituents when they call or email or send mail to the office. It is good morning, Senator Fetterman's office. How can I help you? Or what are you looking for? How can we be of assistance? People call in about bills that they heard about, asking about the senator's health, because I know that is a topic on a lot of people's minds as he did have a stroke on the campaign trail. So they are wishing him well, saying congratulations. It is a lot of people asking about committee assignments because for a while we did not know with the House side. Ryan, I don't know if you're keeping up with American politics while you're in Rome, but the Speaker of the House votes went on for a week.
Mhm.
Usually there are no it's no more than three votes and it's secured, but this time was a little bit different as Republicans have um, uh, gained control of the House. I don't want to make it sound bad, but the Republicans are the majority on the House side, and
Mhm.
so um, the Republicans were trying to pick a leader, and the Democrats were picking a leader. And so those votes lasted a week, which did take a long time. And so it was a little bit discouraging for me to watch some of these House members who got elected, who I'd been following. I was like, this is so exciting. I was like, they're going to be in office, and you had to wait a week. So that kind of did slow a little bit of things down on the House side because without a speaker, you cannot conduct official business.
Mm.
The news is the Senate side wasn't in recess. I mean, was in recess. So my member got sworn in on January 3rd, and then we were on recess for 3 weeks, and we are back in session now. We're in recess tomorrow. Um, what else do I do? I take gallery passes to people if they finish a tour of the Capitol and would like to see the Senate gallery, making sure they get those. I answer their phone calls, whether they are calling, having issues with trying to get their stimulus checks, the IRS, unemployment, housing, passports is a big one. Excuse me. Or people call in about certain issues, asking, again, what are the senator's committee assignments? He does have a committee assignments. He's on 5 committees. One of the ones that we are excited about is he's on agriculture, and it is a farm bill year, which will it's a really good placement and it's really good for Pennsylvanians as farming and agriculture is pretty big in the state in the Commonwealth. Pennsylvania is a Commonwealth, not a state. There's a difference. Um, we receive mail, and it's also forming connections with some of your other offices that are around you. We are in a temporary office. It is a suite of our office, Senator Britt from Alabama, Senator Vance from Ohio, and Senator Ricketts from Nebraska. So we're all kind of if you imagine your dorm, you know, everyone has their own room, but we're all in the same hallway. That's how it is. Um, so
That's really sick. I wanna say like you absolutely inspire me in the way that like you
yeah,
know exactly what your passion is and you don't stop until you keep pushing and you get what you want. And I think that's a message for anyone in any field. Like if you know what you want, just put your whole heart into it, 100% drive and keep going. And like 7 months after graduating from undergrad, you have a job on Capitol Hill. Like that's pretty unheard of. That's an accelerated pathway right there,
Uh,
definitely.
my
Such
goal was to have a big girl job by January 2023, and I did it. So,
that's that's some incredible stuff. So, but I know you're not done yet. So, what's the next step?
well, part of it is really enjoying the fact that I'm here.
Hmm.
Again, this is I've wanted to work on the Hill since I was 16. I did a week long program, did my power walk in the halls, my power suit. And I was like, hey, I was like, I'm gonna be back here one day. So I'm enjoying that. My plan is to stay for the entire 118th Congress, which is two sessions are 2 years.
Hmm.
So senators' terms are 3 years. So that, I mean, senators' terms are 6 years. So that would be 18, 19, and 20. So the 118th through the 120th. My plan is to stay for the 118th because while this is something that I was, when I was looking at jobs, I was kind of deciding, what did I want to do? How did I want to get to my next step? But I also realized that I still had more that I wanted to learn while I was on the Hill and on the Senate side. So that is my plan. Oh, yesterday I participated in the Pennsylvania Center for Women in Politics Ready to Run Philadelphia training, which is a campaign training for women. It is a day long and it is about how to run for office and win. While I worked at the PHWP, I would attend these sessions, but I never got to experience it all the way through as I was um, greeting participants and meeting our panelists and making sure that everything was set up so that participants could have the best experience that they wanted. So I got to participate in that for the whole way through yesterday, and I was like, "Oh, this is so great!" I was like, "I'm so glad I came." Um, I got to meet some really cool people who are running in like on the eastern side of Pennsylvania. I went up to Philly because Philly's 2.5 hours from here, so it was a nice drive up. Ryan, as you probably heard, my end goal is to be governor of Maryland, so that is still the goal. A friend and I were chatting, and he was like, so I did it. So in Maryland, our governor was sworn in earlier in January. He is the third Black person to serve as a governor in the United States. Again, that number is very discouraging, but he's the first Black man to be the governor of Maryland. So that part is exciting. I have much love and much pride for my home state. Um, so a friend and I was at the inauguration. I went to the gala that night. A friend of mine was saying, he's like, if you really wanted to, he's like, you could run for, 2030. And so that has, I'm thinking about that. It could change my timeline a little bit more because I was been saying since I was like 15, 16. I was like, that's the end goal. And it was like, if I do this now, or if I do it as soon as I can, what will I do for the rest of my life? Because people, either they run for governor and then they win and they're there for maybe 4 years, 8 years, and they maybe run for president. That tends to be a path that people take.
Hmm.
I don't exactly know if I want to be president, but I mean, just sound off in the comments, I guess.
Yeah. It's
Um,
definitely a controversial topic.
right. So it could be a little while.
Yeah.
But I really do enjoy state and local politics. My expertise is in voter advocacy and accessibility, so that is something I might look at on a local level. I'm also considering getting a PhD.
Mm.
Uh, don't ask me when, don't ask me in what field, because it would probably, I don't know yet. I just
That's
like the thought
actually
of getting a PhD. It sounds really cool, but I'm
that
not
is
ready to
actually
go back to school quite yet.
no, like I'm totally like actually on the same page with you on that. Like I probably want to get my PhD in sports psychology some point down the
Mhm.
road, but I'm just not ready for that like right now.
Or I could, just continue to do all this cool work in the political field, and maybe some university was like, we want to give you an honorary one.
Hmm.
That's an option.
That's
But
another route.
it's a route, but we shall see.
That's some real awesome stuff though. And like I would not put it past you to see you elected as a governor sometime very soon. Like
And
you
if you
have the
cannot
drive.
vote for me at the time, I would really appreciate a donation because campaigns take a lot of people.
Hmm. Awesome.